It's always all eyes on the quarterback. But when Michael Vick is your head coach, it means a little bit different. Oh, yeah. It's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make it Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode wraps up with a look at a surprising prospect that caught eyes and could possibly be on the radar out of Jackson State. It's not a name that you would think. In segment 2, Sanders Ellis going to Purdue out of Tennessee State. It's brought up quite a few conversations that I want to bring to the table for you because I have some thought processes. I have some history. I have a lot when it comes to Sanders Ellis and his decision to transfer to Purdue. But I want to kick it off with Norfolk State because every team has all eyes on quarterback. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter who it is. You could have a superstar running back, and people will say, well, the quarterback got to be able to do something if they want to be able to win. So now we got to have eyes on the quarterback. You could have a superstar quarterback. And at least on the collegiate level, that's where you're still watching. All eyes on QB could mean a multitude of different things. It could mean that you have a star. It could mean that you have a dud. It could mean that you have an unknown. And in this case, it feels like an unknown, but it means a little bit more. It means a little different when you're talking about Norfolk State, because who is their head coach? Only Michael Vick. And I want to use his contemporaries to compare him to. And when I say that, I don't mean just everybody in the MEAC. I mean Deshaun Jackson, Eddie George, and Deion Sanders. I don't look at his relationship with his position the same as I look at Eddie George's relationship with running back or Deshaun Jackson's relationship with wide receiver. I do look at it similarly as the relationship between Deion Sanders and his secondary, because Prime's the greatest to ever do it, right? So, because he's the best to ever do it, I would think it'd be a travesty if he didn't have good secondary. I would think it would be a travesty if he didn't have good secondary play. And part of that is coaching them up. And here's the thing. Good players do not always equate to good coaches. Good players do not always equate to good coaches. And when I'm looking at Michael Vick, I want to see if what he did on the field equates to being able to explain to when I'm looking at Michael Vick, I want to see if what he did on the field equates to being able to explain to someone else what to do on the field, because it's not that easy, right? Everybody can't teach. And you realize that. I'm a substitute teacher. Now, I'm not trying to compare my job to Michael Vick's job, but I guess I will for a second. As a substitute teacher, I know some of the stuff the kids ask me, but sometimes I don't know how to explain it. Sometimes I don't know how to teach it to them. Sometimes, and here's one of the reasons I always say I'll never be a real teacher. I'll never be a teacher. If you don't get it the way I said it, it's very difficult for me to have another way to explain it to you. And when you're talking about being a dynamic quarterback in the sense that Michael Vick was, he may say, well, this is what I would do. But if that doesn't work for a guy like Carter or a guy like Woods, what's the next step? That is going to be a test of Michael Vick's coaching. So when it's all eyes on quarterback, it's all eyes on the quarterback that's your head coach too. It's all eyes on all of these people, because I want to see, how does Israel Carter perform? How does Earl Woods perform? How does Michael Vick perform? I want to see, how do these players and coaches perform in this job that is new to Michael Vick, location that is new to Carter and Woods. And I keep saying Woods because I inquired on why Woods wasn't mentioned in the signing class, and I heard back that most likely, this is not a guarantee, but most likely it is because Woods had some academic things that he had to take care of, but he'll still be with the team. They just couldn't announce him as part of the class yet. Okay, so I'm going to still operate as if Earl Woods would be there. That's what I mean when I say all eyes, because running back is a tad bit more, not even a tad, it's extremely dependent. It's extremely, if you don't have a good offensive line, I don't expect you to be able to run the football. And with George, I kind of expected him to be a run the football type of guy, but I didn't expect him to have to be a overly successful running. I didn't expect him not to lead an overall successful running offense. And also, I don't know how much input he was going to have in the system. Hey, I like this right now, but as far as, all right, we're going to lean more towards running the football, I don't know if that was really Eddie George's call. Deshaun Jackson, wide receiver, there's so many things that go into it, man. They're going to be off the screen most of the time when I'm watching. I'm not going to see the ball I'm not going to see them until the ball is in the air and targeting them. I'm not going to see it until the ball is in their hand and they're running after the catch. So there's so many different things. I can't really look at Deshaun Jackson and Eddie George the same way I looked at Michael Vick and and Deion Sanders in relation to their positions. I just can't personally. But you look at the guys he got, because this has been a constant conversation for me. What would Michael Vick's quarterbacks look like? When you go get Earl Woods, this is what he says. A blessing, honestly. Someone that I looked up to and modeled my game after growing up. For him to take a chance on me and give me an opportunity is amazing. So you see, one guy says, I modeled my game after you growing up. Makes sense that you would go get a guy like that. And you look at Izzy Carter, his first touch in college was a catch. I'm not trying to call the man that he needs to change positions or anything like that. I don't mean to be disrespectful. But when you look at what he's done in college, is not a lot of time that he has on the field. His first touch was a reception. That tells you about his athletic ability. So yes, I wanted to see if Michael Vick was going to go get a dual threat quarterback, and he went and got two. And I think that this is good. They fit the mold. I think it makes sense. It allows Vick to say, this is what I would do, and feel like they could do that. I think that's the most underrated part about being a former player trying to transition into being a coach. The most underrated and under-discussed point of being a player turned coach, whether it's head coach, coordinator, positional coach, is being able to explain something that to you felt simple. That is not easy. And this was natural for me. I naturally felt this player coming. That's not necessarily what that person would feel. He might not have that natural clock. You got to teach it and kind of ingrain it into him. He might not understand how to snap at the top of this route. He might not understand how to allow the blocks to set up, and that happened naturally for you. Like Deion Sanders. If I try to use one for each guy, Deion Sanders is in a little bit of a back and forth, or he was in a bit of a back and forth with Asante Samuel talking about the T-step. He said he doesn't like to teach the T-step. Some people feel like the T-step is the only way you should do it. Now, what happens when the guy who maybe isn't like Deion can't do it without the T-step? If Deion can't find another way to teach that guy, that would be an indictment on his coaching skills. So when I say all eyes on the quarterback, it means a lot, man, because I'm also talking about Vick. I'm also talking about Michael Vick here. And I don't think that a week into practice is enough time to judge anybody. I do think that I hear that Israel Carter is looking good out there. I heard that he was look kind of natural, look comfortable. And this is something that he said afterwards. He said, where'd he go? I had this quote earlier. Now I can't find it. Oh, wow. That's unfortunate. Wow, I thought I had that quote. I don't want to try to find it right now. I'm gonna waste you guys' time trying to find it, but it was essentially about how Vick's experience is beneficial. That was what it was, but he said it in a way more descriptive way, and I wanted to give you that. But I do think it's important. And one clip that I saw was him talking about the timing of the route. I did see that they had like kind of a documentary-esque, like 1 minute Twitter documentary thing, right? Where Vick was talking about, he was walking through practice, and he talked to the wide receivers, and he talked to the quarterback, And when he talked to the quarterback, he went through the drop and was like, all right, you want to do it here because of the anticipation and this, that, and the third. This is the type of conversations that I feel like we don't highlight enough, but it's the true value of coaches with that experience. Like that's the true value of it. Not that everybody else can't do it, but then I just think it's easier for kids at 19, 20 years old to buy in when they see Michael Vick doing it and they play Madden 04. I just think it's easier to do it when you've seen Vick at the highest level. That's my personal opinion. But I want to get through and give you a whole lot of personal opinion when it comes to Sanders Ellis, because Ellis has transferred from Tennessee State to Purdue, and I ain't mad at the decision at all. I know we often criticize these type of moves, but I think that this makes a lot of sense for him, and it brings a couple of conversations to the forefront that I want to have with you as we continue with Locked On HBCU. You ever check out your bank account and say, where did all the money I had? I swear I was at however thousand, and now I'm sitting here at this. Doesn't make sense to me. Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. I just bought a few things last week, so I completely understand. But that's where Monarch Money comes in. And it's your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. It's not just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. So you can track your accounts, investments, and also spending habits in one place. So you stop just managing wealth and start building, or excuse me, managing money and start building wealth. That juggling of multiple apps, retire that. Just get Monarch Money and consolidate essentially 3-4 apps into one. It's easy for you. It's what I would do. It's what I'm suggesting to you. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On Cougs. Make sure you're checking out Locked On College Basketball. Make sure you're checking out Locked On Auburn. Make sure you're checking out who else is in the dance. The Blue Devils. Check out all of the college basketball shows. Shout out UConn. Shout out my girl Paige Buckets, future Dallas Wings. Shout out everybody. You know what I'm saying? Shout out, make Locked On HBCU a second listen of the day too. No, I'm joking. But anyway, Sanders Ellis, the all-star linebacker out of Tennessee State, has elected to transfer to Purdue. And I think that this sparks two big-time conversations that I wanted to bring to you. Number one, all of the Tennessee State talent is not going to follow Eddie George. And number two, I view freshmen who transfer drastically different. And I realized that in how I was trying to set up this segment. But number one, when Eddie George went to Bowling Green, I believe the full expectation was that Tennessee State is about to lose some talent. That was the expectation. And when it happened, we assumed the majority of that talent was going to go to Bowling Green. And I still think that we're going to be true about that. But you have to look at guys like Sanders Ellis, and you're thinking to yourself, that's one we really wanted to keep. That's one we really wanted to keep because that's a stud, man. Like, that's a guy who that's a guy who was the leader of your defense, stepped in fresh out of high school and did the thing. That's a guy who stepped out fresh out of high school and legitimately transformed the position for you, because you're looking at him as being a 3-4 year starter at Tennessee State. That's a player who you can invest in. That's a player who you can build around. But unfortunately, when Eddie George leaves, now he's gone. And I think that does make it sting a little bit, because you know that guy could have stayed. And when you see him go to Purdue, and especially if he has a good game or has a good year, good couple of years at Purdue, you're sitting there like, we could have had him for at least one more season. He wasn't going anywhere if George doesn't leave. That's just the truth of the matter. But anyway, I don't want to focus too much on that. I view freshmen differently. Because I realize you have more time to grow. You have more time to sit. You have more time to not make an immediate impact. When you're a guy who's coming in out of who's going into like a grad transfer year, or maybe you're going into your senior year, you have one season to make it work at this new location. You have one off season to put everything together. There's no, oh, I finally get it now, right? You don't get to be lethal shooter. You don't get to sit here and say, I understand it now. Well, you can understand it on your way elsewhere because you're not going to have any more eligibility left. But when you're a freshman, you have the opportunity to falter, for lack of a better term. You have the opportunity to grasp the playbook slowly. You have the opportunity to grow into the player you can be at that system. Not everybody excels in their first year in a system. That goes pros, high school, college. Sometimes people need a little bit of time, but when you transfer and you have a year left, it doesn't give you that opportunity. I'm not advocating for everybody to transfer as a freshman because not a lot of people have built up that equity. Not a lot of people have built up that stock to where they can go somewhere as a true freshman or going into their true sophomore season. But you look at Sanders Ellis and he has. So I am okay with him making this decision because quite frankly, it makes a lot of sense to me. It really does. Because let me use this real quick on my freshman versus older transfer, and I'll get there. I realized I viewed freshmen differently than older transfers because I was sitting here thinking about Sanders Ellis's decision. I was like, oh, well, he got a couple of years. He can build an X, Y, and Z. And I don't ever talk like that when talking about transfers because most of the guys we see who hit the portal from the HBCU, they're the grad transfer guy. They're the 1 year guy. And I can't think of anybody off the top of my head who did it and it didn't work. I can't really remember. But you look at a guy like Bashul Tootin. He had 2 years. You look at I'm gonna get to the linebackers in a second, but I just can't think of anybody. But anyway, the point is Juwan Howell from South Carolina State. It absolutely did not work for him in year one at South Carolina, but he redshirt that year, and now he'll come back this season. When you're a grad transfer, you don't have that ability. You don't have that time to say, "Oh, this was not good. Let me go ahead and redshirt, and we'll be back." Even if he didn't redshirt, he still would have had 2 years of eligibility. But anyway, Juwan Howell, he ends up having 3 years of eligibility left. That's the benefit of transferring when you're younger. If you built up that stake, if you built up that stock. Now Sanders Ellis has. A big reason I'm not upset about Sanders Ellis choosing to go to Purdue, even though I thought he was going to go with Eddie George at Bowling Green. But when we talk about these players who transfer from the FCS level to the Power 5 level, we often use this term lost in the shuffle. And I hate that because we use it in a way to critique their thought process when they should never think about being lost in the shuffle. I think that is a stance that lacks confidence. And as a player, you should not lack the confidence in that capacity. But anyway, let's say we're talking about getting lost in the shuffle. Sanders Ellis has two things on his side. One is Purdue specific and one is HBCU specific. Linebackers have had a really good track record recently of transferring and working. It's one of the reasons I'm excited to see what happens with Andrew Jones when he goes to Ole Miss, I believe it is now. I don't know if he went to Ole Miss or South Carolina. I think he committed to both. I can't remember which one was last. But let's look at some of the track record of linebackers who have decided to transfer out of HBCUs. And forget the amount of time they had left. That's a whole different point. I'm not building everything on top of each other. But Jacob Roberts, he transferred from A&T. Second in tackles for a loss, second in sacks, led the team in forced fumbles in his 1 year at Wake Forest. He has 6 sacks from the linebacker position. You're looking at B.J. Davis. He was an all-conference player in the MEAC with South Carolina State. He ends up going to East Carolina. He's an all-conference player in the AAC. You look at Taekwon King. He did have to take that year at East Carolina where he ended up just not playing that much and redshirting. But then he gets to Temple, and he's a monster. He's the first person at Temple to have over 100 tackles in, I think, almost a decade, if not more than a decade. So you're looking at a player who absolutely had a great season, and now he's back in the portal again. So he's a portal monster. But, like, the point is, linebackers from HBCUs have transferred and had a pretty good track record. You look at it, Jacob Roberts, leader in his team in multiple capacities. Jacob Roberts, a leader in multiple stats, or one of the top 2 in multiple stats, I should say. B.J. Davis, all-conference player. Taekwon King, one of the best years by a linebacker in a long time at Temple. These are 3 HBCU linebackers who came in from the MEAC, and they went to another level where it was G5 or if it was P5 at that time, and they still excelled. Meanwhile, you look at a guy like Sanders Ellis, who's coming in from the Big South OVC. He's going to go to the Big Ten. They're going to run the football there. They're going to have some big offensive linemen. I really do want to watch to see what happens. But the second thing I said is Purdue specific. He has two benefits, Purdue specific and HBCU specific. We went through the linebackers, but now let's get to Purdue. They need linebackers, right? Like we operate with this idea that people are going to get lost in the shuffle. There's no shuffle to be lost here. He's stepping into a competition. He's stepping into a room that was competitive. I was reading up on the Indy Star, and this is what they said about Purdue. Linebacker was a particular area of need for Purdue's defense during the transition to new coach Barry Odom. Former UNLV linebacker Manny Powell followed Odom to Purdue. Former Arkansas linebackers Carson Dean and Alex Sanford Jr. also transferred in. So now that does put Sanders Ellis as the only FCS transfer. But at the same time, Dean, Sanford, they don't have any built-in relationship with Coach Odom. But you're looking at Powell, he was his linebacker. So that's different. But if we're talking about getting lost in the shuffle, everybody's new. You needed help at the position. This is going to be a competition. If he wins, he wins. If he doesn't, he doesn't. But that's not the same thing as getting lost in the shuffle. When you total up everything that we've looked at, if you total up everything that we've discussed, I really like the decision by Sanders Ellis to go in and transfer, right? I hate that he had to transfer from Tennessee State, but if he was going to leave, I think it made sense for him to go jump to that P4 level, specifically at Purdue. They need linebackers, right? That's the thing. Sanders Ellis didn't just transfer to the P4 level. He made a very wise choice of where to transfer. He transferred to Purdue that needs linebackers. First off, linebackers have translated in the transfer portal very well. B.J. Davis, Taekwon King, what's the other guy's name? I can't believe I'm catching a brain fart right now. Jacob Roberts. How did I forget Jacob Roberts? But HBCU linebackers have translated very well when entering the transfer portal. Jacob Roberts, B.J. Davis, Taekwon King. You're going to a situation in Purdue where they say they needed linebackers. They brought in a bunch of linebackers in the transfer portal, which would tell you that they're planning to have a competition. So you have a fair shot just like everybody else does. You look at that last aspect of him being a freshman, he has time to develop. And if we're talking about draft stock, I know it's way too soon to have that conversation, but he has multiple years of Big Ten film on the way. I completely understand. And I think that he played at a high enough level, chose a good enough destination, and plays a position where the translation has been quick. All of these things add up to a very wise transfer by the freshman Sanders Ellis. Now, I want to push forward because there's one guy who's a little bit surprising. Alan Walker. I bet you wouldn't have thought that that was the Jackson State prospect who was getting a little bit of notice, but it is. And I want to get into this as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Supply House. Now, Supply House is the site you need to get all of the supplies for skilled traders. It doesn't matter if it's plumbing, HVAC, or electrical. Supply House is the reliable way to get to order your products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered first from coast to coast. Now, you need help with an order? Go ahead and join the Trade Master Program because Supply House is going to offer expert support and industry-leading service. So the Trade Master Program is free and something you need to invest in. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master Program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and use the code SH5 for 5% off your first order.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
As wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. Alan Walker was identified at the Jackson State Pro Day as a player to watch. And I'll be honest with you, as I'm going through these draft circles, I have not heard his name before. But Tony Pauline, who's a guy who does have some sources, he does have some credibility. So if he's trying to tell you we need to look for Alan Walker, I'm going to at least take it serious. He looked at what Walker was able to do at Jackson State Pro Day, and he highlighted his dimensions. And I just want to go through some of this because it's interesting to me. That was just an interesting person to highlight. I would assume, let me give the numbers first, and then I'll give my opinion. But Walker staying 6'2", 234 pounds, edge rusher, completed 25 reps on the bench, and had a 36-inch vertical. He says, unfortunately, Walker pulled a hamstring issue on his first attempt at the 40 and could not compete. Walker will be participating in the Falcons local pro day, and he'll also be participating in the workout at University of Georgia April 17th. His last thing was he's a sleeper at the linebacker position who comes with scheme versatility and a lot of upside. Where did he get that from? He had to hear that from somewhere. Somebody was talking at that Jackson State Pro Day. Now, what's interesting to me is you solely go based off of 36-inch vert, 25 reps on the bench. I don't think that that's enough metrics, like enough testing. I don't think it's enough events. I think that that's a very good number. 36, 25, those are good numbers, especially at 234 pounds. You got to like that, but it's just not enough for me to go with a guy who had limited production. When you look at what Alan Walker was able to do last year, he had 1 sack, 2 tackles for a loss, and he added 2 pass breakups. Most of that production comes in the first half of the season, first 5-6 games of the season, I think. As the back half goes on, non-factor. He doesn't have a lot of tackles. In the season before, he doesn't have any sacks or TFLs. I do think he showed some good athleticism with 36 on the vert. I do think he showed good strength with 25 on the bench. Like, I do think that these things are true, but at the same time, there's nothing. I don't care if you're talking about athletic testing. I don't care if you're talking about stats. There's nothing that makes me say Alan Walker is somebody I need to be watching. So when you hear Pauline say that, I would assume that he heard it from somewhere. And I don't mean to be disrespectful. I'm just saying the dude did not produce a lot at Jackson State. He was not the leading pass rusher. He just wasn't on that team, and he wasn't the leading pass rusher. He wasn't the leading tackler. He wasn't a big part of this defense. That's just the way I looked at it. So he will be next to he's from Alpharetta, so he will be next to guys like Jalen Walker. Or actually, Walker won't be participating unless anything hasn't changed. But Michael Williams, Malachi Starks, like he'll be there next to some premier prospects. So he'll have an opportunity. He's from Alpharetta, Georgia, and I'm assuming that's how you got it done. But I just kind of feel like you must be making moves yourself, because what are you doing at the Georgia Pro Day? I know Mississippi don't have a team, so there's nowhere for you to be there. But University of Mississippi, Mississippi State, just feels like he's doing a lot of things on his own. And I got to salute that, because in this process, get your name out there no matter what. You feel like you got traits, you feel like you have upside, you go ahead and invest in yourself, and you get to this Georgia Pro Day, you get to this local Atlanta Pro Day, you do all of these things so that you can be seen. I like it. He'll have a chance to complete his athletic testing. And then maybe once we see the 40, vert, shuttle, broad, bench, all of those things together, then maybe we sit here and say, oh, he has an athletic profile that I'm looking very closely at. But anyway, on tomorrow's episode, we'll be looking at the DC Defenders. I want to say why you need to be watching them this season if you're a Tennessee State fan. So let's go ahead and break that down on tomorrow's episode. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.